So when I first planned out this video, I wasn't sure if I was actually going to be able to film it out here today. A couple miles behind me, there's an approximate 5,000 acre forest fire going on right now. And the last couple days, there's been a lot of smoke and a lot of ash raining down on me. In fact, yesterday, when I was outside, I could not even see 100 feet away from me. Air quality was really bad. But today, the wind shifted and they're coming in a direction that's blowing the smoke away from me today. Now, thankfully, that forest fire is entirely on national forest land right now. It's not threatening any houses or any properties, anything like that. So hopefully the hardworking crews up there can get it out in the next couple days here and get it under control. So the camera I'm talking to here right now is the OBSBOT Tail Air. This particular camera, not only does it shoot in 4K high quality video, but you can also use it outdoors. You're not tethered to a computer. You don't have to have it connected to it. You can basically take it anywhere you go. And this camera also has some really nice tracking and other fancy AI features on it. So if you're not sitting here, if you wanted to say, walk around here and maybe talk about something over here, or go back this way and talk about something over here, the camera is going to follow you. And you don't just have to have it follow you. You can have it follow an object, an animal. There are lots of different features for that. And this camera is what I consider the best value webcam out there right now. The OBSBOT Tail Air is only $499 and it is packed full of features. Let's talk about some of those features, and I'm gonna show you how to use the app to set this camera up for best settings. This camera has a 1/1.8 inch Starlight CMOS sensor. It does up to 4K 30 frames per second or 1080p 60 frames per second. And it's got a nice big wide open f1.8 aperture. That f1.8 aperture is great because it lets in a lot of light, and that's really an advantage in lower light environments and especially indoors. Or on a day like today where it's kind of overcast. This camera also has fabulous AI auto tracking, and it also has a director's grid feature. I'm going to show you that in a little bit in the app, but the director's grid feature is probably one of my favorite features about this camera, because that director's grid gives you multiple different shots that you can select from, and you can toggle between them. Now, this is especially useful if you're filming multiple subjects and you want to have the camera switch to which subject it's focusing on. All you have to do is tap the screen in the app and it's going to switch that camera to that subject and that type of framing. And that director's grid can also be a great feature if you're using this camera for a live performance and you want to switch to different angles to make it more interesting. This is especially good if the performance involves multiple individuals or some type of concert performance where a band's performing and you want to get a scene of the drummer, you want to get a scene of the guitarist, someone on the vocals. This camera is excellent for that. In addition though, you can live stream over Wi-Fi with this, so you don't have to have it plugged in to your computer, your phone, anything like that. You can do Wi-Fi streaming, and you can also do cellular. The cellular streaming is particularly exciting to me because I often like to be outdoors, and if I want to do a live stream or something from the middle of nowhere, as long as I have a cell signal, I can do that. And the OBSBOT Tail Air does support the NDI, RTMP, RTSP, and VISCA standards. Now, if you know what those are, you know what those are. If you don't know what those are, basically those are a bunch of different common standards that are used frequently for live streaming. If you're going to use this camera a lot for live streaming, I do recommend picking up the smart remote that goes with this. And the remote basically has all the key features available and options on it. So it's a great accessory to have to go with it. Now, the app that goes with the OBSBOT Tail Air is called the OBSBOT Start app. Once you get the app installed and paired with your device, there are a lot of features in there you can change, and there are some in particular that I recommend changing to get the best results with this camera. So I'm gonna bring that up on my phone here, and I'm gonna show you what those settings are. So let's open the app here. And right there is the record button. So I just hit record. You can see me right there on both the camera and the screen. So I want to show you around some of the options within this app. So if we go down here to this button right here, you can change your ISO, your shutter speed, and your EV comp options. And what I found is the auto does really good on this. It doesn't seem to over or underexpose. It does a great job. So in general, I just recommend keeping auto set on there. And down here, you have your grid option. That's highlighted red because I have that selected. That's useful to line up with your rule of thirds, anything else where you want to have it well balanced there. In addition, right here, we've got a bunch of different options. So we've got the on-air. These relate to the framing. We've got the on-air, which is the one that's currently going right now. If I click auto, it's gonna switch the framing, and then on air is gonna show this current auto framing. Close up is about the same as auto in this situation. Half body, that does a little bit further back, not quite wide, not quite auto. If you want full body, it gives the full body option there as well. So if you click on the 3 dots down here at the bottom, this is where you have a bunch of additional options. So the gesture controls, it basically goes through those here. And there's certain gestures you can do to the OBSBOT tail air to have that camera do certain things. And I have all of those enabled, but you do have to be careful because if you accidentally make one of these gestures and you don't want the camera to do that, it could do that. So do keep that in mind. In addition, we've also got some audio options here. So the built-in mic is an option. There's a pretty good microphone on there. It's not gonna always be a good idea if you're in a really noisy environment or if it's a kind of breezy day like today. So I do have my external mic on here as well, which you can connect external mics to this via various interfaces on there. There is a 3.5mm jack that you can plug in your external mic to as well, which is great. And audio settings, you can get into noise reduction and automatic gain. You can do a lot there, so that's pretty good for audio. And face auto exposure, I have that turned on. I recommend doing that. If you're using this for live streaming or recording video and it's got a human subject in it, you're gonna wanna expose for the face to have the face properly exposed. You can also set ISO upper and lower limits. I currently just have this set to the entire range because that larger pixel size makes it such that noise isn't really a concern on here. So I just keep it set to the full spectrum there. And then down here, if you own the NDI equipment and want to activate that, that's where you would do it right there. We've also got the RTSP mode and media settings. So it's not gonna let me change these while it's recording, but you can see here what I recommend. I recommend 24 frames per second, but if you want to do 30, 30 is great as well. I personally prefer the 24 frames, but 30 is also a great option. For the encoder, I recommend doing H.265 with a high bit rate and a resolution of 4K. And then of course down here are the RTSP settings, which you can change if you're using the RTSP protocol. And then also the HDMI output. If you're connecting this to a monitor or TV, something like that, you can change the output there. For the HDMI output, it's usually not necessary to have it output as 4K. I usually would just recommend keeping that at 1080p. And then going down here further, the tail air settings. I keep most of these off up here. You can turn them on if you want to, like the auto power off could be great to save battery, or if you want to have something with timed power off and timed power on, that's also great to have here. Status light, I keep that on. I like to know when it's recording or when there's activity going on with the camera. Brightness, I like that all the way up to 5 here. I like to be able to see it clearly. And the buzzer is also a great feature. It'll make a little buzz when you start it recording or stop it recording. For the video segmentation, this basically controls the files that you're recording to your micro SD card. So before the file gets too big, it will actually split that up and start a new file. This can be useful for preventing corruption. So sometimes you might want to keep it at that lowest of 4 gig, but I personally go with 8 gigabytes because I do have a SanDisk Extreme card in here, and that card does work well. I've not really had corruption problems on it. But if you don't want it to divide up your videos into a bunch of segments, I recommend clicking 64 gigs down here. And for the SD card, you can of course format the SD card here. Do note if you format it, it's gonna delete any files on it. I do recommend formatting about once a month or so, just to lower that risk of corruption. But generally it's not necessary to format it otherwise, unless it is a brand new card you're putting in which case I recommend formatting as well. And then down here, if you need to reset all connections or restore factory settings, that of course is gonna be your options down there. And at the top of this menu, you can see that it's got 83% battery life left in this right now. And what I found is even in 4K 24 or 4K 30, this battery in here gets a solid 1.5 to 2 hours. And the nice thing is if you have an external power bank, you can plug this into the back of the OBSBOT tail air, and you can have the device powered with an external battery pack. So that's a great option as well. I'm gonna go back to the home screen here, and down here on the bottom, there are a few other options. So you can do the AI tracking, which is this box right here. So you can draw a box if you want it to track something else, and it's going to move the camera, but then I'm gonna redraw the box around me because I want the camera to track me. And then over here, this adjusts the speed at which the gimbal moves. So if you want to pan it this way or pan it this way, you can do that. You've also got some zoom options over here. And if you want it to pan slower, you can go over toward the turtle. which I generally recommend staying more toward the turtle to have it panning a little slower. You don't really want it to pan too quickly because that can look kind of bad. You don't want it to be jumping around for your audience. As you can see here, as I move, even on the slow setting, it follows me just fine. I try to get out of the frame, it still follows me. If you try to hide behind something, it still finds you and it will follow you. Even if you go over here into some tall grass and such, it still follows. So very impressive AI tracking. Once you set it on the subject, it does a great job sticking with that subject. And I also wanted to mention it does come in a nice little case here. So you can put it in here if you're gonna take it on the go. And that case fits in the hand. It's not a very big case, it's not bulky, but it is a good way to protect the camera unit in this case. And as you might have guessed, this camera is also a great one to bring on the go. If you're just doing some solo shooting and you don't have anybody else to run the camera for you, do your thing, you can walk around, this camera's gonna follow you, it's gonna film you. You could have this set up on a trail. It's also great if you wanna walk sideways by it like this. Let's say you're walking down a trail and you wanna go through like this, the camera's still gonna follow you. This camera is a great tool if you wanna walk around and talk to your audience too, if you don't just wanna sit in a chair or stand in one place. It's great to follow you. And of course, webcams like this, the indoor use cases, there are plenty of those. They're great for YouTube Studio if you're showcasing a product. If you're doing a cooking show, it would be really nice for that. You can have a bunch of those different framing options to show the close-ups, to show you walking back and forth in the kitchen. Whole lot of possibilities of that. Live music performances, excellent for that as well. So this camera is very versatile, it's very useful as you can see, and it's a great product for solo and group shooting as well. So I've linked to this product in the description below if you want to check it out. If you're looking for a great webcam, a YouTube Studio camera, or a camera that you can film outdoors with on some of your adventures, I definitely recommend checking out the OBSBOT Tail Air.